Hey ladies, this is Marcia here. Before we begin this amazing episode of Member of the Month, Donna Lavin, I want to make sure that you ladies mark your calendars for this Sunday, July 24th at 8 p.m. Keep in mind, for the last 21 days, the Green Squad team have been sharing tidbits of what this secret challenge entails. Yes, this is something you do not want to miss. This is by far one of the biggest announcements that we have had thus far since LadyStrong Fitness inception. So this is something you do not want to miss. I guarantee you will not be disappointed. So again, mark your calendars for Sunday, July 24th. Be there or be square. We will make sure to send out a link via text alongside via email and inside the Facebook group page. So we have 3 different sources of communication for you ladies. So that way you do not miss out on this amazing opportunity. So I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Take care. Bye.
So the big question is this: how were 2 women who didn't cheat and purchase a gym franchise model, how were they able to spread their mission and purpose by empowering and transforming hundreds of women's lives through fitness, nutrition, mindset, and accountability with a micro gym business model of women only? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. We are LadyStrong Fitness.
Hey ladies, this is Marcia here with another episode of the LadyStrong Fitcast, and I have a very special guest today, LSF member Donna Lavin. Donna and I, we're going to be talking about how she survived cancer and is now thriving in her fitness journey. Donna, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. So you and I had a sidebar conversation before we started airing this episode, but it's been 4 years. 2018 was the last time you sat down with Brittany on the podcast. You were actually episode number 17. And since then, I think we're at like 300 or 400 episodes into it. So the last time we had you, the topic was how to be fit over 50. Since then, a lot has changed. So for those of you that do not know you, I want you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Oh gosh. I don't know. I've been a member for a while, off and on, I'm not very consistent about going, but I remember doing that podcast with you guys when you first started, and the gym was pretty new then, and you had just started to really expand the studio. And I remember a note that I sent to Brittany and to you that said, I am just super impressed by everything that you ladies are doing with everything. And I remember saying this, everything from the branding to the studio to the membership, start everything. I was just super impressed with it. And a friend of mine that I worked with had recommended the studio. So I joined, and it was just nothing like I had ever seen before. It was just really fun. I love the fact that the lights aren't super bright when you go in, and you could just, you kind of can hide if you want to, but you leave feeling like, you just conquered the world. And those are feelings that everybody wants to feel after they're working out. So I love the whole atmosphere and the studio. My personal story, I guess. I don't know. I've been around the world for a little while. I'm 56. I am, I'm not even recently, 2 years engaged to a great guy that I know.
By the way,
I'm a State Farm agent. Yep. I've been a State Farm agent for 15 years. I've been with State Farm for 34 years. So probably most of the members aren't even alive for 34 years. So I don't know. What else do you want to know?
Yeah. So let's talk about when you first came to us, you started out doing group classes. Yeah. I remember you saying in your previous episode, you were always healthy growing up, and you never experienced any sort of high blood pressure, any of that. And then you found that, later on in life, you started getting aches and pains in your joints and whatnot. Fast forwarding 4 years later, actually, let's say 2 years, 2.5, maybe 3 years after that episode has aired, a lot has changed between that last time we had spoke. So let's fast forward a little bit from when we first met you to 2.5, 3 years into your fitness and wellness journey. What happened, but for those of you that may not know you, explain what was that. I want to be very sensitive, be very careful of the choice of words that I use, sensitive, as far as you had some disheartening news, share that. What was that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, exactly like you said, I had never really had any health concerns. I've always been very healthy. And I've always said it's sort of by mistake that that's happened because I've not spent a ton of time. I didn't always work out consistently. I ate okay. I didn't, but I never smoked or, whatever. So I've been relatively healthy most of my life. So, great. So last February 2021, I went in for a mammogram because I felt something. And, I felt it on a Wednesday, I had a mammogram on a Friday. By Tuesday, I had a biopsy, and Wednesday, I had the news. Guess what? You have breast cancer. And it wasn't a shock to me for some reason. I was just like, okay, what next? I mean, that was kind of my attitude through the whole thing. Okay, what next? What do we do next? So, you suddenly get hit with a breast cancer diagnosis. And, unfortunately, the timing of it was really, probably the most difficult thing because my fiance had just lost his daughter, and it was almost exactly a year to the date that she passed away. So right about the time he's starting to feel like, he's never going to get over it, but he's going to get through it. So right as he's sort of getting through that, I'm like, oh, by the way, I know we just got engaged 4 months ago, but no, I have breast cancer. So he was wonderful helping through that. I have a really amazing group of friends and family, and I felt like I had a ton of support through all of it. So last October, after, chemo, surgery, and radiation from February through about probably October, you guys had a breast cancer session, training, whatever. So that was the first time I'd been back in probably a year. And so I certainly didn't think that was for me. But then Brittany's like, well, we have a survivor here. And I'm like, oh, God, whatever. But I had no hair. I mean, I had a little bit of hair, but, and you just go through it,
Yes.
So I've started back training with a personal trainer at the studio, Emily, who's been phenomenal.
So let's back up for a second, because I don't want to get too far ahead.
Yeah.
We're going to I want to ask you some questions because I don't want you to, I mean, you talk so nonchalantly about it. I recall when we went out to supper or brunch, Brittany and I think Emily was there as well. And your diagnosis, I want let people know, like, what stage did you find out you were at? And you explained your reaction. What was that initial feeling, as far as like from a mental standpoint and a physical standpoint? Let's talk about that, because I think that's really important to the audience.
Okay. So the surgeon that I talked to right away, when I first got the news, I was by myself and I was like, shit. Sorry if I can't say that.
Oh, you're fine.
But I was shit. So of course I called my sister right away, talked to her. She was like, shit, and I'm like, we got this. That was my thought is we've got this. So I met with the surgeon a couple days later, and she said it's stage 2B, which I didn't even know there was a B. I've learned more about this than I've ever wanted to know. But stage 2 means it hasn't spread anywhere yet. So it wasn't in lymph nodes or in the bones or in other organs or whatever, because I knew I found it early, which is the power of early detection, right? Yeah. So I'm thinking she's going to say, you need to do a lumpectomy and radiation. And the first time I met with her, she said chemo and chemo first. And I was like, ugh, like, really? Because that's the hardest thing, obviously, because chemo kills.
Yeah.
It's supposed to kill the bad cells and the good cells. And that's why you lose your hair, and that's why your skin is weird. And so, I didn't want to be the person that everybody looked at that was like, oh, poor her, because I know people who have a lot worse situations than I do. And, I had a friend whose son, when he was first born, had retinoblastoma in his eye, and they took his eye. He was 6 days old. That sucks.
Yeah.
You're 56 and you get breast cancer. That's kind of boring. It's kind of a boring story. And not to make light of anybody else's journey, but in my life, for my world, that was how I tried to think about it. Was there's always somebody that has it worse. Yeah. I've had an employee whose son needed a bone marrow transplant, and so I have a friend who's a 3-time cancer survivor, and, there's always going to be a story of somebody. And so 100%. I just figured the more I knew about it, the more I would be prepared, but I didn't Google a bunch of stuff. I didn't read a bunch of stuff about it. I just, whatever the doctor said I needed to do, I did. That's it.
I like that. So you didn't become a victim of your circumstances, because I recall when we went out to, I felt like we've been going on a lot of dates lately.
I know, right?
Cooper's Hawk. We went out and you were so bubbly, and I mean, your mindset was amazing. Like, honestly, I don't know how I would react if I were in your shoes. For some reason, I consider myself a very strong human being, but to go through something like that, I don't want you to necessarily digress your situation and make it seem like it's not worse than others, because either way, it's not good news, right? But your mentality, oh my God. Yeah, but your mentality was amazing. And if you had any advice for someone, how did you stay so strong throughout the entire process?
So, of course, total transparency. Of course, did I have days where I was just like, this sucks. This sucks. And I don't want to do it. And I don't want to be going through this. And it just sucks. But I never, okay, so this is what I said to you that I think I said this to you guys that day. Two things. One, I was never in pain. I was very uncomfortable. I had a lot of days I didn't feel good, but I was never in pain, right? Sure. So a lot of people go through a lot of pain. So that's one thing. Now I say that saying I didn't feel good for a year. I mean, I really did not feel good at all, but I wasn't in pain. Second, I was never, ever, ever afraid. I don't know why. I don't know where that comes from. I just didn't allow myself to think about the fear of everything that comes along with cancer. I knew I would get to this point. I knew I would get to this side. I don't know why I knew that, but I just felt like I'm going to get to the other side. It's going to suck to go through it. Sure. But I had a lot of people that supported me, and a lot of friends and family that just, were constantly checking on me. And I was just like, I've got to be strong for them. I don't want everybody feeling like, they need to feel sorry for me, because that's just not who I am. Yeah. Do you think it was the belief of the outcome that you knew that you would make it on the other side, or the faith that you had? There had to have been something. You said that you were doing it to stay strong for everybody else, but what was it for you? I think all of that. I mean, I thought sort of was raised. My dad used to always say, like, can you take it? Can you handle it? Can you deal with it? Can you handle it? And I was always that kid that was like, yep. And plus, not being sick a lot as a kid, I kind of was always like, I've got this. And knowing that Glenn had gone through that with his daughter and his son, Ben, soon to be my stepson, Ben, had gone through so many things with losing someone important to them in their life. I'm like, that's not going to be me. I'm too stubborn to go anywhere. I love You're stuck with me. Yeah. So fast forwarding now, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we're happy to say you're now in remission. Well, I think, I mean, yes, I just had all my scans and everything looks good and all that's good. I don't know if they really consider remission until you've passed like 5-year, 10-year marks. Got it. My type of breast cancer is called triple negative, was called triple negative breast cancer, which means it doesn't come from estrogen or progesterone or the HER2 hormone. So that's the triple negative. 1, 2, 3 doesn't come from any of those. So they did all the hereditary tests too, especially since I'm adopted, and none of it came from there either. So environmental, who knows where it came from. But that type of breast cancer, triple negative, is very aggressive, and only about 10 to 15% of people that have breast cancer get that type, which is why they started with chemo. Sure. They needed to make sure that I would respond to the chemo before that would ever, be something that they were going to do surgery and then follow through with. So it does have a recurrence rate that's higher. So that's something to think about. But my oncologist, who is this like really like strong Serbian woman, and she was just like, we are going to cure this. We're not going to treat this. We're going to cure this. Yes. She high-fived me after surgery. Like, she's not the kind of person that high-fives anybody. So I was like, if she's that optimistic about it, then I'm optimistic about it too. That. I just listened to whatever the doctor said, I love that. So before we move on to fast forward, I want you to share a story. And I think the story is fairly important. And you shared it with me.
And you said there was a gentleman that was also there that was getting the chemo treatment, and his mentality versus your mentality. Share that story with us.
Okay. So I had this thing called a cooling cap that helped you keep your hair. I ended up losing all my hair anyway, because at the end I stopped using it, but it did help me keep it. It helps it come through. So I called that my party hat, right? Then whenever I had chemo, I called that my cocktail party, because it was a chemo cocktail. So my nurse from the very beginning, like the first time I met her, she comes in and she's like, how are we doing today? And I said, great. And she said, great. You're about to have chemo. How are you? Great. And I said, I'm great. I'm great. And I said, this is my cocktail party. I've got my party hat on. She's like, well, I have my party gown on. She had her scrubs on or whatever. And she laughed and she goes, I'm going to sign up to have you on my round every time I'm here. Every time you're here, I want to be your nurse. And I said, really? Why is that? And she said, well, I love your attitude, because there's a guy down the hall. And she said, I just walked in and said to him, how are we doing today? Stan or Lee or whatever the heck his name was. And he said, well, how do you think I'm doing? I'm dying. And she said, oh no, my friend, you're not dying. You have the wrong nurse, because I'm your chemo nurse. I'm not your hospice nurse. Yeah. And she said, I need to be around people like you, Donna, because that helps me in my job. And I'm like, well, you're here to help me. So I'm, whatever you need from me, I'm going to do. But,
yes.
That guy might've been going, maybe he's had chemo before, maybe he's had cancer before, maybe his journey is different. But I just kept thinking, this is not going to define my life. 100%. This is just a detour on my life. 100%. It's a detour on my journey of life.
I love that. And I like that. Thank you for sharing that story, by the way. I'd like to correlate that to LadyStrong, because there are different women who have different mindsets coming into the program, regardless of where they are in their fitness and wellness journey. Like you said, you don't know what their necessarily journey is, but you're going to be positive about it. But there's still some people's like, oh, I've tried everything, or I'm not losing weight, or oh, I can't do it. But they're already setting themselves up for failure because of the way they're thinking. Right. And I wish everybody was like you, that had that mindset. Right. Seriously, because I'm actually kind of curious if his name's Lee, Tim, Bob, whatever, where he's at now, if he's in remission or whatever, or if he overcame that treatment. But if I had to guess, just based on his mentality, I wouldn't say it was very good. Right.
Yeah. I was surprised by the number of people that said that, attitude is so much a part of healing and all that. And it's so much true, even with your fitness journey, right? It's attitude. It's not always the results even.
100%.
Like, I would love to have lost more weight over the last year, because I think that's going to make me more healthy, but I just haven't felt good enough to really try to do all of it at the same time. So I was talking to you about it. You're like, maybe you need to do a personal trainer, maybe. Yeah. And that's been the best thing, because just getting back to feeling like, I can do some things, and I mean, she had me deadlifting 100 pounds yesterday.
So time out for people that don't know this. So when you did come back, you didn't hop back into group training, because it's been a while, let's be honest, since you've been out, and we told you, Donna, well, that's okay. Well, why don't you just do one-on-one customized training until you find yourself in a position that you're ready to then participate in the group classes. So now you're working with Coach Emily, doing one-on-one personal training. Now we're going to talk about that deadlift here, but let's talk about like that first week back, getting into the groove of things. How did you feel? What was some of the things you and Emily discussed as far as your goals moving forward? Let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm. She was great. She was like, we'll start slow, which isn't really slow, right? I mean, she's just like, try this. But she would say, can you do more weight than that? And if she would think she could tell if I was straining or if I was really doing weight. But we did a lot of stretching. We did a lot of really getting up and down off the floor was one of the hardest things. I mean, my knees were really sore just from not doing anything. And my shoulders, I have just from, constantly being at a computer and typing, my shoulders are always really sore. So we really did start slow. And then after a while, it got, to a point where I was like, she's like, do you feel stronger? Because I can tell, from week to week, she's like, I can tell that you're not, it's not painful to try to do things. And she said, you just try to do what I tell you to do. And I just, again, just like the doctor, I'm just like, she tells me to do something. She's the professional. She knows more than I know about what I should try or what I should do or what I can handle. And then she'll just ask me if I can do more weight or if I can do more reps. And she'll say, and if I'm going to do something, if I feel like if I cheated my way through it, I'm going to do an extra rep, and I'm just going to try again and do it. And, I don't know.
So now you're deadlifting how much weight?
She had me doing 100 pounds yesterday.
That is amazing. Did you think that when you started with her that you would, if she told you that day one, that you'd be deadlifting 100 pounds, you probably tell her you're out of your mind, you're crazy.
I would have been like, what? And the best part was, don't tell her this, but I think I could have done a little bit more.
Oh, she's going to be watching this, right? So Coach Emily, you heard it first. You make sure to add more weight onto Donna's deadlifts. I love that. You
just a little bit more.
You're in trouble now. So honestly, like for anybody that is in a position, I mean, would you recommend, and we're not here to sell anybody or persuade, but
right.
Explain some of the benefits of doing the personal training over the group and why would you recommend it?
Okay. So, I've had a personal trainer before in the past years ago, like 7 or 8, 10 years ago, before I met you guys. And she was great and everything, but she was really into, fitness, posing, coaching, and all that kind of stuff. But I remember when I was there, she would say, do this or that. But she wasn't correcting things as I would go, where Emily's really good about saying, like, flatten your back, widen the stance. This is what you're trying to feel. You should feel this here, like the whole time, kind of going through it and counting the reps. She must count reps in her head at night when she's sleeping, I would think, because, she'll walk away to get something or to get another weight or something. And she's like 6, 5, 8, whatever. So, but that personal, like, she's watching the form, and she'll say the form is more important than the weight or the reps or the speed with which you're doing it. So we do things pretty slowly. But it's also that, the more she gets to know me, the more she knows to push, when to push and when to kind of pull back in a class. Although you can get that because the class sizes aren't huge. Mm-hmm. You really are kind of caught up in the whole classroom setting of it. And if you're not sure at first what you can do or how far to push yourself, it's really good to have that guidance.
Yeah, that's nice. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. I think that and I have to bring this up from a cost perspective, what you invest in, what you pay for, I like to say, let me be careful of what I say here, but you respect what you invest. Let's just put it that way. And most people are very hesitant because it's too much money or I can't do that. But do you find that it's worth it? Like, let's be honest here. Is what you're getting worth, as far as a personal training perspective?
100%. 100%. And I don't say that just because I may be in a position later in my life than some people earlier on where they've got little kids and other things. If you can figure out a way to fit it in your budget, there's nothing more important than your health. Because if you can't move, like somebody said to me one time, the way you go into your 50s is, or something about, I'm going to get it wrong, but it's something like, the way you go into your 50s as a female dictates your again, I can't get it right. I can't remember how it's said. Okay. It's something. So when I probably said this in the first video, I intentionally didn't watch that because I didn't want to repeat anything stupid that I said the first time. So I was like, didn't want it in my head, but your health, you can't really pay enough for your health. So if it's like, you can cut back on Starbucks, or you can cut back on eating out, or you can move some things around, or even, just find a way to invest. And it is an investment, but it's so worth it, because I feel like the time that I spend with her, I used to always make excuses and say, I don't feel good today, I'm going to cancel, or I'm just not going to come to class, or I could make them. I'm really good about making excuses, and I'd have a plan. I'd be like, okay, I'm not going to go today, but I'm going to go Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I haven't done that one time once I hit myself in the head and other stuff, but I haven't canceled with her. And I told her, I'm like, I feel so happy when I leave, which is just bizarre for me, to really like to work out like that. Cause I don't always love to work out, but it's so fun. And I just feel like I could just take on the world after I leave. Yeah. And it's that personal piece of it.
Yeah, it's the accountability for sure. It's like having a one-on-one date and always having to cancel on your date. You don't want to disappoint your date. So it's like, oh, I have to show up, right? And I'm glad that you shared that. So I know you've gotten stronger, but what are some of the other benefits since joining PT with Emily? What have you noticed, significantly different in your life?
Flexibility for sure. And just like when I stretch, I can, like the benefits of certain types of stretches make the pain go away. Like my shoulders are better now. I don't, and I could go to physical therapy all day long, but this is like intense physical therapy, and it's, you just feel like you're capable of doing stuff again, and you just feel younger and, I don't know, just able.
Yes. I always like to end the episode by asking one final piece of advice. Anyone out there that's tuning in today, if it's a member or non-member, what would be your advice for them?
Take it one day at a time, whatever it is. If you think you want to lose weight, don't think about the end goal. If you think you want to get stronger, don't think about the end goal. If you think you want to get healthier, you want to get past an illness, don't think about the end goal. I mean, keep it in mind because it's out there that, that's your horizon, but one day at a time, one training session at a time, 1 pound at a time, one chemotherapy at a time, whatever it is, but one thing at a time, because you can handle anything if you make it small and make it manageable and not try to get overwhelmed by the whole goal.
I love that. That's really good. And you know what? I'll be honest with you. That's not the first time someone has said that by giving advice, but it's so important. It's so important. And the first thing when you said that comes to mind, and I'm just thinking from a personal perspective of myself in business, it's like, you just want to be there already, whatever that is, having that second location or whatever it is. But when Brittany and I, when we both look back, I think the best times that we had is when we were in those hardships, when we were eating those dollar burritos, but it was the bond and the time that we had with each other that made it so special. And it's like, I wouldn't trade those moments for anything. And I'm hoping that anybody that's listening in is like you said, just enjoy the process, right? Don't let it pass you by. So yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was amazing. So Donna, as always, it's a pleasure speaking with you. Ladies, I hope that you were taking notes because she was dropping some bombs today. Seriously. So Donna, thank you so much for coming on. Ladies, thank you for tuning in on another episode of the LadyStrong Fitcast. Have an amazing day and we'll catch you later. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. If you like this episode, subscribe to our YouTube channel or find our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or whatever your favorite place is to listen to podcasts. And if you really liked this episode, please leave a review for us on iTunes. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.